not so easy to part with your pawns. It's much easier to part with somebody else's pawns while analyzing it. Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress with number 129 in the series Viewers Games. It's the turn of Marial Majok. Hey Ricky, I'm Marial Majok from South Sudan by nationality and age 21. I started playing chess in 2013 in Yei, also known as Small London. This is a small town in South Sudan. I also started playing online chess in 2016 and I really enjoyed your channel on YouTube, which has given me courage to progress well on tactics. Hope this channel is not only for me, but for chess lovers who find it useful. And this is the game I've played with my friend on Lichess, who did not give his or her name. It was very interesting for me. Can you spot the winning move? The time control was 5 minutes plus a 3-second increment per move, says Marial. Marial was black in this game, so we're going to look at the game from the black side. And if you want your game to be analyzed on the Chess to Impress YouTube channel, you can send it to me by email to classroomchess64@gmail.com. As said, the game was played on Lichess. White went under the name of AGB0008 and had a rating of 1861, while Marial's rating was 7 points higher, 1868. And white opened with a d-pawn, knight f6 from Marial, c4, e6, knight c3, and we have a queen's gambit. Here the main move is bishop g5, or c takes d5 is also very popular, as is knight f3. But white goes for the fourth most popular option, e3, just protecting that pawn in case it gets taken. Here bishop e7 is popular, and so is c6, but Marial plays c5, and now we have a lot of tension there, a lot of pawn tension in the center. Knight f3 is the main move here, but knight ge2 was played by white. And after knight c6, white took in the center. A friend of mine has a theory that amateur players are not able to keep that pawn tension in the center in place for more than a few moves. Very quickly the amateur player gets fed up having to calculate all the captures on every move and decides to solve the tension. And that's what we see in this game as well, proving my friend's theory. Not a bad move, c takes d5. E takes d5 and d takes c5, which allows black to develop his king's bishop without losing a tempo. Bishop takes c5. Black has an advantage in development. This knight is oddly placed. It hinders the natural development of white's king's bishop. And a bit of compensation for white is the isolated queen's pawn, which black has. g3. White is going to solve the problem of the bishop by fianchettoing the bishop to g2. Castling from Marial. Bishop g2. And that's attacking the d-pawn 3 times. And it's only defended twice by the knight and by the queen. And Marial decides to not give up on that pawn, but defending it a 3rd time with knight e7. But the engine indicates a more active possibility for black, which is bishop g4, pinning the knight on e2. Yes, you're going to lose your d5 pawn then, knight takes d5. And let's just look at one variation where we see black's compensation for the pawn. Knight takes, queen takes, and bishop takes. Then black can play knight b4, threatening knight c2, winning the rook in the corner. Knight d3 check is also annoying for white. So bishop e4 deals with both those threats, and then rook a to d8 with good compensation for the pawn. Black has active piece play, while white is struggling to complete his development. For the moment he can't castle, as then the knight on e2 will be unprotected. So bishop g4 instead of knight e7 was a nice possibility for black. But as said, Marial is hanging on to his d5 pawn. Understandable. It's not so easy to part with your pawns. It's much easier to part with somebody else's pawns while analyzing it, but to do it in a game is much more difficult psychologically. Castling from white, and Bishop g4 again is a good move. Marial plays h6, and that's what some chess trainers call a half move. It's not clear at all that h6 is a useful move for black in this position. Knight d4 activating the knight. That's a nice square for the knight. Cannot be kicked by any pawns. Knights like those type of squares. a6. So black has played h6 and then a6 on subsequent moves. a3. White copies black. Bishop g4 finally attacking the queen. And f3. Attacking the bishop dropped back, and now b4, that is the point of a2, a3, gaining space on the queen side. The bishop is attacked and went back to a7. Bishop b2 developing. The rooks were put on the open c file, and knight c6, undermining the strong position of the knight on d4. The engine gives f4 as a possibility, but here white makes a mistake. He takes on c6, and that leaves something hanging in white's camp. This pawn is now hanging with check. You can take it, king h1, and then take back on c6, and black has an extra pawn. Just like that. Marial didn't see it after knight takes c6. He missed that he could take on e3 as an in-between move. He took back on c6. Rook e1, white had spotted that weak pawn in his position, and he protects it with the rook. Rook e8, hitting the pawn again. Queen d3, defending it again. Queen e7, ganging up on the e3 pawn. And here king f2 is a move, hanging on to the pawn for dear life. But white went with the king to the other side. He must have thought that bishop takes e3 is now not possible. But it is possible, and Marial played it. By the way, the engine likes d5, d4 even more in this position. But bishop takes e3 was played, and now knight d1 from white, pinning the bishop this way and hoping to win it. But black has looked further and is going to give his queen for 2 rooks with a winning position as a final result. Good calculation from Marial. He must have seen this before he took on e3. After king h1, Marial must have smelled a rat. Was it really good to take on e3? But he decided it was, and it is, as we'll see now. Bishop takes c1. The queen is lost. Rook takes e7. White has won the queen for 2 rooks. But this is a totally winning position for black. White's problem is that his pieces are not coordinating and his king is unsafe on the back rank, as we'll see. For starters, you cannot take on c1. You cannot just take that piece. Why not, if you want to look for yourself? How does black refute this? White has just won a piece. But bishop b5 is now a very nice move, attacking the queen. And the rook is attacking the bishop. With queen d2 you can get the queen to safety and protect that bishop. But then there is rook e2, protected by the bishop on b5. Nice move. The queen has to play again. And if it goes to f4, keeping the bishop protected on c1, that doesn't work because of the weak back rank. Rook e1 check. You have only one legal move. And that bishop gets taken. King g2 and the knight gets taken. And white has been able to hang on to his bishop on c1. But he has lost 2 other pieces in the process. And now black is a piece up. That's a nice variation. So after rook takes e7, white cannot really take on c1. Even though it looks that wins a piece. White saw that and he played bishop c3 in the end. Bishop b5, very strong move from Marial. Attacking the queen. And queen f5. White's position is very bad, and in bad positions mistakes come easily. It was already difficult to find a good move for white. But this queen move attacks the rook on c8. But that rook is now deciding the game by giving itself up for the bishop on c3, which is guarding the e1 square. Rook takes c3 is indeed a very, very strong move. It looks like it's giving up an exchange because the knight takes the rook, but now we see the same move as we saw in the variation earlier, rook e1 check. And again you can only interpose the bishop, which gets taken, but not with the rook. Rook takes f1 is not a very strong move because of king g2 and then bishop c4. The bishop has to keep the rook protected, and it was in danger of being chopped off by the knight, and then the rook would be unprotected. But there is queen c8 check, king h7, and knight takes d5, and white is back in the game. Much stronger after bishop f1 is to take the bishop, not with the rook, but with the bishop from b5. Because now black is threatening checkmate in one move with bishop h3. A discovered attack on the king, and the game is over. And all white has is a few spiked checks. Queen c8 check, king h7, and queen f5 check. Marial played up the g-pawn to shield the check, did not mind that the knight is now unprotected because he has this checkmate in one thread and there's nothing that white can do about it. He's not able to attack this rook, which is the piece that will give the checkmate. The queen cannot move to a square where it can safely attack that rook. White resigned here. There's nothing reasonable to do against black's mate in one thread. Play the queen anywhere, and this is checkmate. A very nice picture. Checkmate with rook and bishop. A very nice game from Marial. Well played, Marial. I really liked in this game that first white was ganging up on black's d5 pawn, and then a little bit later it was black's turn to gang up on white's e3 pawn. White let that pawn be taken because he thought he was going to win a piece with that pin, but then Marial, you gave your queen for two rooks, and that resulted immediately in a winning position because of the very poor back rank of whites. We saw a few nice variations which showed how dominating black's pieces were. White's pieces were not coordinating and were being dominated by black's pieces. This was a good example which shows that the two rooks can be much stronger than the queen. Sometimes it's the other way around, but in this case the rooks outplayed the queen. Again, well done, Marial, and thank you very much for sending me this game. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel and please leave your comments. I will read them all and I will reply to them all. The link to the playlist of this series of viewers' games is in the description box underneath this video, and if you like it, it would be great if you could share it on social media by clicking the share button on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram, on Twitter and on Facebook. This is Rick for Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.